What's going on, FA Nation? John Impemba here with James Grande, bringing you the Fantasy Line NBA DFS live stream for tonight's six-game main slate. James, right as we're jumping on the air, we got the injury news we're waiting for. Anthony Davis ruled out for tonight. Unfortunately, Kyle Kuzma also ruled out. So power forward position, maybe a little bleak for the Lakers, but that's going to open up a lot of value elsewhere. And, of course, we did the podcast last night. There's a lot of underpriced guys on the slate as well. So I'm going to go maybe stars and scrubs is the roster build to win tonight.
Yeah, I think you can go either route. I think stars and scrubs because you can get guys like LeBron and Trae Young into one lineup with the value that's opened up is obviously strong. And there's probably 120 point upside from just those two guys alone. That's elite. But I think fair and balanced is perfectly fine too. There's a lot of really good upper echelon players in the Nets-Pelicans game, like Spencer Dinwiddie, Brandon Ingram. So if you do want to do a fair and balanced build, plus we talked about it last night in the podcast, another fair and balanced guy, Domantas Sabonis, there's no Anthony Davis guarding him now. So it's right. There are
It could be Jared Dudley.
Right, it could be Jared Dudley. So there are multiple routes to go. I think if you want to do fair and balanced, that's fine. But I also think, like you said, you can also do a stars and scrubs type of evening because Lakers are just really not too expensive outside of LeBron. So
yeah, I agree with you. 6-game slate, late night hammer tonight. Phoenix Clippers 224.5 game total there, but a 13.5 spread. Yeah. Not exactly the most ideal spot. Nets and Pelicans 228 2-point spread. Atlanta, New York 225 1.5 point spread. I think those are definitely the two most stackable games on the slate.
Yeah, those are exactly the two games that I have the most exposure to as well. Four teams who play zero to no defense. It should be fun, and you don't necessarily think that with Knicks Hawks, but Trae Young, in the Garden, the Knicks playing a little better since they started giving all their actual basketball players minutes, so that should be a fun game. And the Pelicans, we know, play at a fast pace, and the Nets play at a fast pace too, with the price-depressed Spencer Dinwiddie leading the charge.
Yeah, it makes no sense. One last question before we jump in, the positional breakdown. With Anthony Davis ruled out, do we have to play 5 Lakers tonight, like we had to play 5?
No, we don't, because there is still a guy named James, LeBron on the floor that will have the ball in his hands for the entire game. So I don't think we need to play 5. You could play 3. I think 3 is reasonable. LeBron, Rondo, and one of the centers, I think would be probably the most popular approach tonight of that Lakers stack. And you bring it back with Sabonis or you bring it back with Brogdon. But I think 3 max, and you just jam LeBron in everywhere you can.
I like it. All right, let's jump into that playbook. Again, you have some guys listed at the top that you like that you didn't necessarily write up. If we want to look at the point guards there, Ricky Rubio, you have him as an elite play, if no Devin Booker, and then we have the update that Booker is actually doubtful again tonight. So it is looking like Rubio could be by himself here. Then you have Rozier against Sacramento. De'Aaron Fox active, going to be on a minutes limit, and is going to come off the bench tonight. So brutal defense usually played by De'Aaron Fox. So there's a good chance Rozier is going to get that matchup probably at some point against him. So I kind of agree with those two guys. But why don't you talk about your top point guard options tonight?
My top point guard tonight is Spencer Dinwiddie, point per dollar. I think it's kind of a no-brainer. We get a floor of 35 fantasy points every single night without Kyrie. We could talk about the massive usage rate. We could talk about the massive fantasy point per minute output. And then we just factored it in. We get a pace-up spot, and we get a team allowing no other team allows more fantasy points to point guards than the Pelicans. So everything just culminates into great play in Dinwiddie, and his ownership projections speak to that. I think he's a lock for all formats. And I mentioned it at the top, price depressed. His DK price has dropped, which is insane. So I love him. Trae Young for tournaments. We mentioned going to the Garden. Great environment, especially considering Elfrid Payton's playing 25-plus minutes now. We get Elfrid Payton defense for that amount of time. No-brainer. I don't love the top of the point guard position outside of there. I mentioned Rubio at the top. I only say elite in tournaments because it is a 13-point spread, but we've seen 50-point upside in back-to-back games. So I think it is an elite tournament play. I think the mid tier is really going to be popular tonight. I think Lonzo, if he starts, even if he doesn't, he's only 5K, 6K on FanDuel. We already know there's no JJ Redick. I mean, 2 of the last 3 games, he's actually gotten 25 plus minutes. He's given us over a fantasy point per minute. And again, it's game environment. It's matchup. Brooklyn bottom 10 against point guards this year. Great spot. Elf, in the flip side of that Trae Young game, gets Trae Young defense. Right. And now he's playing 25 plus minutes. I think we're going to see that type of role. Look, he's good. He's a good basketball player. He's just needed, he was dealing with Dave Fizdale, who didn't know what he was doing. So I think Elfrid Payton, for what Elfrid Payton is perfectly fine in tournaments. And then Rondo. I think Rondo gets a huge boost here. 1.35 fantasy points per minute without Anthony Davis this year. I think we could see Rondo start time. I mean, we heard earlier in the year Frank Vogel talk about he was going to start a lot of games. That was like the exact quote. And we haven't seen him start yet, but this can be a scenario where he does slide into the starting lineup so they don't have to use Jared Dudley in their starting lineup because he'll get abused by Domantas Sabonis. It'd be easier for them just to play LeBron at their traditional power forward and use him to guard Sabonis. Right. So I think Rondo is a great play, and I'm willing to go as far as saying I would use Rondo in cash with Anthony Davis off the floor.
Think about the potential value GBP upside. Guys like Peyton, Rondo, and Ball all have potential triple-double upside.
All 3 of them.
All at 5K or under on DraftKings. Pretty huge there.
John, which one?
Having a field day right now with this background.
Hey, you know what? We've dealt with 2 years of my dogs. And you know what? Your cat is saying, hey, hold my beer, Zeus. Yeah. Hold my beer.
Screen right down, I swear to God.
If you were to pick one between Elfrid Payton, Lonzo, Rondo to get a triple-double tonight, which one would you choose?
Oh, I think Rondo is always the top guy.
I think it's Rondo as well. Especially with the Anthony Davis news, 1.35 fantasy points per minute. I think we get triple-double Rondo tonight.
I agree with you. Let's go to shooting guard. Again, shooting guards you have listed at top. Garrett Temple. Kevin Huerter you have listed up top. It didn't make the playbook. I actually have a lot of Kevin Huerter tonight. He wasn't, when we did the podcast last night, it was almost like he may not have played, and now he's going to play, and he's starting, and he has no minutes limit.
Right.
So, I mean, he's 4,000, 4,200, I think, on DraftKings. I mean, that's just absurd for a guy that you only need 21 fantasy points for 5X. We've seen him do it before. Great spot here for him against the Knicks. So, I mean, I like him a lot, going up against top. But what else you got here? You got, Drew Holiday and Josh Hart, both with the Pelicans. And there's more value even.
I don't love the position tonight. I think it's nice with Huerter. Also, Jared Dudley officially starting.
Good.
For Anthony Davis.
Lock in Sabonis.
God. Jeez, why, man? Kevin Huerter's really good. And the fact that there's no minutes limit is really appealing. I mean, we've seen 30, 35-point ceilings out of him, and in the Knicks matchup is really good. They have defended shooting guards pretty well. That has to do with the R.J. Barrett length. And on the flip side of that, R.J. Barrett, for whatever reason, is $4,500. I get he's been bad 3 of his last 4, but that one outlier, the one of 4 went for 44 fantasy points. Right. So
double, right?
Yeah, I mean it's really hard to ignore that. And again, it's Atlanta. It's a nice pace game for Barrett. They allow the 7th most fantasy points to shooting guards as well. So I love Barrett. I love Josh Hart. We don't know if he's going to start. He has started 4 games this year, so that's something that we are trying to predict. I like Drew Holiday if he starts at point guard because Brooklyn has been really good at defending shooting guards this year. So I'd feel more comfortable at 8,300 if he was going up against Spencer Dinwiddie instead of Garrett Temple and guys like that. So I like Holiday. Don't love him. I think this is probably the weakest position. Garrett Temple, I think, is fine. 4,800. I think you can play him in cash. I think there's a good floor. He plays 30 minutes a night. And then Devontae Graham. We've talked about it for a month now. We don't play enough Devontae Graham. His ownership is still less than 5% projected. I still don't have him in lineups tonight, and I know I should. He's shooting the ball horribly. and he's giving us 35 fantasy points as a floor. You know, on the nights where he doesn't, he gave us 64 fantasy points. So, I mean, that's an elite GPP play if I've ever seen one. The total isn't like appealing, and I don't think as many people are going to be on this Charlotte Sacramento game as it should be, because
nobody ever plays Charlotte. It seems
nobody. But I do think Devontae Graham can be a slate breaker in tournaments.
I mean, I know we currently have lower projected ownership right now on LeBron. I'm assuming on the next ownership update,
skyrocket.
LeBron's got to be like 50%.
Yeah, he's going to be 50. I mean, it's a 6-game slate, and there's no Anthony Davis. Everyone knows the numbers. It's 1.88 fantasy points per minute, 45% usage rate.
You only see that from guys who like have like a 13-minute sample size and blowouts, and they're the ones that score. Yep. He's going to be on the floor for 35 minutes tonight against the Pacers, and he's going to have nobody that can defend him. It's not, Jeremy Lamb can't stop him. They're not going to do TJ Warren. Like it's just going to be all over LeBron. This is just an awesome spot for him to have a ceiling game. And it's not as though like he and Rondo can't have good games together. Like the other day, both Rondo and LeBron both had double-digit assists. So like it's more than likely that's also in the play here. But yeah, LeBron at smash spot. Love Brandon Ingram. He is in the starting 5 today from Justin Fensterman. Again, like his price tag's finally a little bit on the rise, but you lock him in for 40. He's just like Sabonis. Yep. You put him in for 40. He has a 50-point ceiling, and you just live with that. Like he's not going to go for 80, but he's also not going to go for 20. Really, he's going to give you a really solid 5x, 6x upside return.
Yeah, he's the perfect cash game play, right? Him and Sabonis are both the guys at that 8K price tag. You just turn and you say, all right, I'm comfortable putting you guys in my cash game lineups and moving on. And that's Brandon Ingram. I mean, that game environment has 50-point upside written all over it, though, I will say, because, I mean, everything about it. Don't forget, John, Brandon Ingram in this Nets game, 40 actual and 56 fantasy points the first time around. So,
there's a potential. Do we know yet if Caris LeVert is back? Do we get that update?
There is not a official word.
I mean, not that you would defend him, but I mean, like, I don't know. He's like a decent defender.
I'm not worried about that so much, even if Caris LeVert plays, because it's going to be such a limited basis.
Okay.
I don't think they would want to put like a returning Caris LeVert on Brandon Ingram.
Sure, that's fair. That's fair. And like I said, it's not as if like LeVert is like a total shutdown, but he is, like a 6'7". He's kind of lengthy, and he is one of their better, on ball guys typically. So
for sure.
I was just wondering if we knew if that was a thing or not. So something to at least throw out there. What other guys are we looking at here at your small forward? I mean, you do have Taurean Prince on the flip side of that matchup. He's probably the one that's definitely drawing the start. Against Ingram. Then you have other guys like Bridges, in Phoenix with no potential Booker. What else are we liking here at small forward?
Yeah, I mean, I love Taurean Prince tonight, and I guess the masses do as well. The price tag is very fair across the industry. And we saw a really nice game against the Pelicans. Again, game environment has a lot to do with this Brooklyn Pelicans game. I think it's going to be a lot of scoring. It's going to be really fast-paced. Both teams are top 10 in the league in pace. So, Prince went for 41 fantasy points against this team the last time they played. I generally just roster him in GPPs, but sometimes, you just let the slate dictate who we play. You've heard me say that like 100 times. I kind of like him for cash, just factoring in game environment, factoring in pace up spot, factoring in, the Pelicans allow the 7th most fantasy points to power forwards, which is a position Prince starts at. So I don't hate him for cash games. Like, I'm primarily using him in tournaments, but for cash as well, I'm not like saying no, like if someone asked me like Prince and somebody else against someone else for cash, like Jabari Parker, who's a similar price tag, I would pick Prince in a cash game. So I think Mikal Bridges is going to start again, right? And he's been living off peripheral stats 3 of the last 4 games. 8+ rebounds in 3 of the last 4 that he started. But you and I both know that's what he does. He's not on the floor. He's not taking shots. He's peripherally good. He rebounds well. He's very good in the passing lane. So I'm fine with Mikal Bridges tonight. Plus, no Cam Johnson. So we got to think, even in a blowout, Bridges probably plays 35, 40 minutes. So I have up top Paul George and Kawhi, who I think are both in play. I want the Lou Williams news. Like, I want air to breathe because like
that means everything. They both become in play if he's out.
Right. We saw, I mean, in tournaments only because it's 13.5 point spread still, but we saw them both go for 40 actual points in the same game without Lou Williams. And we know how much, usage Lou Williams sucks away, just vacuums up from both of those guys. So I think they're both in play in tournaments. If Lou Williams sits, if Lou Williams plays, you can play them in a tournament if you are you really want exposure to that game, because I don't have a lot of exposure to it. Yeah. But if he plays, we could just move on, kind of.
Yep, I agree with you there. Let's go down to the power forward position there. We've already kind of alluded to Sabonis here. Yep. I mean, great play. Lock and load, going up against Jared Dudley. I'm not too worried at all about that. 8K on both sides is fine too. Again, he's going to get you 40 to 50 fantasy points. Just set it, forget it, lock it in. Yep. You have Randall below him against Atlanta, Jabari Parker defense. Randall for me is just a guy that I haven't had a good time playing. He hasn't had the ceiling game when I have him. I know he's had a few this year, but I wonder if Mitchell Robinson getting a bigger piece of the pie now is impacting him a little bit. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, if anything, he's been dominant the last 3 games. 36 plus fantasy points in 3 straight. Over his last 5 games, he's averaged 39 fantasy points. I just think I don't want to speculate what they were doing for Dave Fizdale or what they weren't doing for Dave Fizdale, but obviously there's been a spark since the coaching change and just kind of every Nick across the board. Sure. They're all playing minutes. They're more cohesive. They're more competitive, which I think is ultimately the big factor. Plus, this is the matchup for power forwards. Atlanta is dead last against power forwards. Randall coming in strong. And John, for as long as you and I have been podcasting and live streaming and just talking fantasy basketball, we've attacked Jabari Parker. Right. On the playground, Joe Schmo, I would play him at 3K if they picked him up and Jabari Parker was on the other side of the ball. So I think this spot is elite for Julius Randle. So elite that, and especially on FanDuel, I'm playing him in cash games on FanDuel because it is very bleak. Like DraftKings, you can get away with playing other guys at other positions. Right. FanDuel, I'm fine with him all formats because position scarcity. So I love Julius Randle.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I know I've looked at his recent game logs. One of those was the overtime game, but you're right. I mean, I guess, if they're just sort of matching better, or they just have a different offensive focus, then I guess it makes, sense given the matchup for sure. Marvin Bagley, big play for us, I think, tonight, or at least for me. I mean, you talked about it. We're both big fans of what his potential can be. You put it in the playbook, he's not going to be 5.5K for long. I agree. This could probably be the last night we see him this cheap. So Charlotte struggles against the front courts. Most teams, he played 22 minutes the other night while being in foul trouble in a blowout game. So it's possible that he could have played even more minutes. So Bagley, I think, is in a really great spot here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued by the minutes because it's something that we alluded to on the podcast. Was his minutes going to be 25, 26, 27?
Yeah,
we don't know.
The first game he came back. So, he's in that range.
But there was foul trouble, and there was a blowout involved. So what was his actual cap? Because if we're getting 27 to 30 minutes of Marvin Bagley at 5,500, I mean, it doesn't get better than that because also we're facing Charlotte's front court. And we're getting Cody Zeller at the starting power forward position. And that's why we were attacking Charlotte centers, because Zeller was their starting center. So, I mean, everything lines up for Bagley. If it's 30 minutes, he is one of the best per dollar plays on the slate. If it's 25, I still think it's fine for tournaments. I'm not, but I think those extra 5 minutes matter because we've seen guys in 5 minutes go for 16 fantasy points when they're elite. Sure. So 25 is good. 30 cap, I think he's an elite play.
Yep, I agree with you for sure. Let's go ahead and go a little bit further down. Other sort of guys you've mentioned, on the flip side of that, Marvin Williams. How do you feel about him? We went over it on the podcast last night. He had played 27 in like 30 minutes or something like that before getting hurt. There's no PJ Washington. They did start Cody Zeller at power forward the other day. He played alongside Biyombo. Is this a case where you're going to wait for the starting lineup to come out? Do you think that Marvin Williams is just a good value regardless of the fact? Like, how much are you trusting him today?
I think he's a tournament play only, unless, of course, he does start. I mean, 3,400, 3,700 opens up a lot. I mean, you'll be able to get Sabonis, Ingram, LeBron with the type of value we have. So I do think Marvin is a tournament play only, maybe cash games if he starts. But, I mean, he was playing 27 minutes with the likes of PJ Washington healthy, Bridges, and both centers. So we got to think without PJ Washington there, Marvin Williams is going to be the primary backup probably for both positions when Sacramento goes small, because we've seen Sacramento play Bagley at the center as well. I mean, Rashawn Holmes isn't huge, so Marvin I don't think would be it wouldn't be like too much of a mismatch if he did play backup center. So I think he's fine. And then Jabari Parker for tournaments. I think that game stack is really elite. Nick's allowed the fourth most fantasy points to power forward, so I think I can get behind Jabari in tournaments as well. And obviously, you see the FanDuel ownership much higher projected. Again, the position is horrible. It's horrifying. If you're not playing Sabonis, you're not playing Julius Randle, it's really bleak. So I don't hate the Jabari Parker play for tournaments either.
All right, and let's go to the center position here. You have guys like Derek Favors, DeAndre Jordan, listed up top. But you also have Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee, and of course now Anthony Davis is ruled out. And if you look at sort of the usage in minutes, like it tilts a lot towards Dwight Howard because he's played the most minutes without Anthony Davis on the floor for obvious reasons. But I mean, JaVale McGee now is going to be without Anthony Davis to start, and he is a fantasy point per minute just like monster typically when he's on the floor. So how are you feeling between the two here?
I think you can go either. I think more people are going to tilt JaVale's way because we've seen the big games out of JaVale. Like we've seen 2 40-plus fantasy point games out of JaVale, and we haven't seen that out of Dwight. But I think like it's in Dwight. I mean, Dwight is going to be literally set up by Rondo and LeBron for 30-plus minutes all night. Lob City. There's no Anthony Davis to hawk rebounds. I mean, I think we could be looking at like 15-plus rebounds from Dwight. Because he's still the guy that's playing more minutes than JaVale. I think they're both fine. I like Dwight, the fact that he'll be lesser owned.
I'm hoping they both play just like 20 minutes because, you can still get good value at that price tag.
I mean, Dwight plays 20-plus minutes with Anthony Davis off the floor. On the floor. So, I mean, he played 23 last game against Atlanta with Anthony Davis there. So, I mean, we could be looking at 25, 26 minutes out of Dwight, and if he's getting 26 compared to JaVale's 18, I'd take the 8 extra minutes any day of the week. And I think DeAndre Jordan in this game environment has like 15 rebound upside. I mean, he's flashed at the last 3 games. He's been really good the last 3 games. So that's why I have him up top as well.
All right. If we do go down to the guys who did write up, though, we have the returning DeAndre Ayton. We talked a lot about him on the podcast last night. A lot of, team talk about him working his butt off to get ready. And, we don't know if there's even going to be a minutes limit because it was just a suspension. It wasn't an injury. And he had a really good game night 1. And then he got popped for a 25-game suspension. And he returns to a really good spot here against the Clippers. Price tag, $7,400 on DraftKings and $79 on FanDuel is fine. Then you get Vucevic in a similar price range going up against Utah, which, in theory seems like a tougher spot in Utah against Gobert, but he came back from injury, played 29 minutes right away. And we know that he has a strong offensive game, with 50-plus fantasy point upside. So, talk about your centers here.
So I wrote them up because obviously we're not going to just write up mid to lower tier plays, but I don't find myself going there often. Like, I think I'd rather go Vucevic. Utah's allowed the sixth most fantasy points to opposing centers over the last month, and it's something that we've kind of been talking about throughout the year. I think people are still scared to play guys against Utah, and they're not the same defense they once were. They lost really good defenders in Gordon Hayward. They lost really good defenders in Derek Favors throughout the year. So they're not as daunting as it once was. So I think Vucevic for tournaments, especially considering his minutes limit ended up being 30. So what are we going to see in the second game back? I would go there. Ayton's fine. I mean, we like attacking the Clippers, and there's no Devin Booker. But if this game blows out, like, do they risk playing him more than 30 minutes? I don't know. I don't see it necessarily. So maybe like a dart throw on like a Kaminsky in a tournament, just because I don't know what Ayton's minutes limit or minutes would be in a blowout. But then like Mitchell Robinson, I think is a really strong tournament play in a nice game environment. I mean, we already talked about it. That game is really enticing from pace, from the implied point total.
Also, centers against Atlanta has typically been a spot. So
right, and we're getting minutes. Like all of it doesn't matter if he's not getting minutes, but we're getting the minutes. I mean, 6 straight games of 25 plus. So definitely fine for tournaments. And then the 2 Charlotte guys. I think Zeller is fine if he's starting. He's been really, really under the radar for the last week and a half, 2 weeks. And now that he's starting, he played 28 minutes, gave us 40 fantasy points. And because he's starting, there wasn't a backup center. And Biyombo played 28 minutes. So I think both are honestly firmly in play. Now, I guess it all comes down to your interest in the Lakers, though, or DeAndre Jordan, because if you think Dwight's going to play 25 minutes, I'd rather save the $800, $900 and go down to Dwight. Or if you think JaVale McGee gets the bump, he's under 4K on DraftKings. I would rather go down. Yeah, I would rather go down that way and take a shot on JaVale. So I think the Lakers guys are ultimately where I'm going to go. I think DeAndre Jordan's a really nice play across all formats too. But I can see getting behind some Zeller, some Mitchell Robinson for tournaments, and Biyombo as well.
Alrighty. I have one question just popping up here. If you had to pick one, Sabonis or Randall?
I would go Sabonis for cash, and I would play Randall in tournaments. I really like game stacks for Atlanta Knicks, so I would probably lean Randall more often than I would lean Sabonis. So you also save $1,000.
Okay, just a question. Just a little. I mean, I think it's close.
I think it's really close. I think it's really, really close. It doesn't get better than Jabari Parker, but Jared Dudley is 95 years old, and now he's trying to guard a bully, like a straight up someone who's going to lower their shoulder and put it in your chest. But something we talked about last night, Jared Dudley's out there trying to get Demontis thrown out of this game. He's trying to get him thrown out of this game. So, I mean, Kevin Garnett, anything is possible. I'm going to lean Julius Randle.
Alrighty. Any final thoughts here? Lineups are out. I'm sure some edits might need to be made, though.
Yep.
Everything else is posted, though. Value Vault, starting 5. So 30 minutes to lock. We're here for you. Good luck, everybody.